a podcast that believes that all fragments of silicon should have the right to vote.
All right, welcome to another installment of Fragments of Silicon. I'm your host, Adam. Joining as always are Petty and Galax. Let us get to the news. Galax, why don't you start us off this week?
Well, the weatherman forgot to cancel all of the March snow deliveries that were scheduled, so we got a couple inches the other day, which was not a whole lot of fun, especially since it's a lot heavier to clean up. Luckily, it's well on its way to melting. I'm still working on trying to get a new laptop so I can try to figure out what I'm doing with the travel plans in May, so not sure about that. I'm kind of torn between how much I'm willing to pay versus how much I trust a refurbished thing versus the fact that actually particularly good laptops are extremely expensive instead of only very expensive.
And unfortunately, because the Cheeto, they're going to get even more expensive.
Like, I found one that is pretty well recommended, but even that one, the screen is only 1080p, which is actually kind of small, so. But it should still probably work. I don't know. But it's also a little bit more expensive, and like, most of the ones that are in the price range are in the really popular these days extremely thin form factor, which I do not trust for durability, which is important when something is going to be, carried around in a bag a lot. So yeah, that's about where that is. Video game wise, I've been playing a bit of Splatoon 3 and a decent amount of Dead Cells. I think that's about all I got.
So that would be my go.
Yep.
Well, we had a weekend. My dad decided he wanted to try and go up on the roof to put sealant around the chimney, because that seems to be where our leak was coming from. And he hurt himself because he injured his shoulder, and the old man doesn't realize he's, past the point of pushing 60. So, trotting up ladders isn't exactly something he can do anymore. So we had to call a family friend to help us with that, because with my, neurological problems, I can't exactly go up a ladder onto the roof. So hopefully we just sprayed some Flex Seal around the base of the chimney and stuff. So hopefully that resolves our problem. We're expecting to get rain sometime in the next couple days, so here's hoping no more leaks. And then I also, over the weekend, played Mario Party for the first time, because one of my mom's coworkers and her husband got Mario Party Jamboree, and it's like, oh, we have a Switch, let's go get that too. And then, yeah, we played Mario Party over the weekend. And
with no casualties, I hope?
Currently, yes. I have not punched my sister in the head yet. So,
they're usually not lingering.
Yeah. So that was fun. As far as like other like gaming things, I've been, I guess, kind of have Pacific Drive on hold for right now because I need to deal with my grinding for Final Fantasy 14 to get my gear and stuff caught up for the new patch. So it's like, it's once that stuff's done, I'll probably pick it up after I put a little bit more into what's it called? The game for this week, or my game for this week specifically.
Coradin.
Yes, that. I wanted to call it like Kododin or something like that. It's like, no, that's not how those letters work. So yeah, that's been interesting. I did stream some of my, at least going through the main scenario for 14. If anyone is interested in that, I do need to publish that though, and probably send the VOD to my personal channel. But yeah, I think that's it from me that I can think of.
I suppose that means it's my go.
Yep.
Let's see. Following up from last week, blood pressure taking.
You're dropping out, Adam.
Hello?
We heard none of what you just said.
Okay, so first up, I am officially going to be looking for a new laptop soon because I think I mentioned this before. But just wanted to reiterate that's probably going to be sometime in early April. Though, as far as what kind of laptop, not sure quite yet. And also, it's just going to be a week of setting up.
Yeah. At least with Windows 10 and 11, moving stuff over is a lot easier than what it was back in the olden days. At least if you have use the Windows online services like OneDrive and stuff like that, it's not a problem.
I can't remember the last time I used OneDrive.
It should be built in. If you've ever signed into your Windows account, it will sync your basic documents folder and stuff like that to the cloud. At least that was the default behavior when I installed Windows 11 on my custom PC. I don't know if way laptop setup, if that's an on by default thing or if that's something you need to set up.
I mean, that's, as you said, the basics.
Mm-hmm.
The big thing literally is going to be re-downloading my Steam stuff.
If you have a portable hard drive, you can literally just copy it over to that and then shove it in the new Steam directory. As long as you're logged in, Steam doesn't care where the hell you got the data from.
Okay, I have a portable hard drive. The problem is it's only a terabyte hard drive, and I have about 1.7 downloaded here.
I mean, it's one of those you can also just get rid of games you're probably not going to play, at least for a while.
Right. Or getting a new one. The point is, it's still something I'm going to have to deal with.
Yeah.
And let's see, the blood pressure medication issue has been resolved. So thanks. Thankfully, that's no longer a concern. My mother went to the doctor's office. I had to take her down. That was fun, or rather tedious and time consuming. I spent the whole better part of the day. And I suppose the good news is she's at the basic level doing fine. There's nothing immediately, but they want her to do the full battery of tests, and that's that's going to be in May, and the results aren't going to be known until the end of May. So, whatever heart problem may be that it's afflicting her is still unknown.
Mm.
And tomorrow I'm going to be out because the place is finally getting steam cleaned. I'm probably going to be out while the Nintendo Direct is going on. That will make things potentially hard to follow there, but that's what tomorrow brings, literally. And I suppose that's my news for the week. In gaming news, right now I am playing through The Longest Journey, which is a adventure game that I've only heard about in the most vaguest of terms. One of those really good games, but don't know too much about it. And also, I keep getting it confused with the Journeyman project.
Honestly, that's what I thought you said. Was based off of that.
Yeah. No. These are two different series. It's just The Longest Journey dovetailed into Dreamfall. In fact, the second game is called Dreamfall: The Longest Journey, which is the one I started up first. I'm like, wait, this is the sequel to something.
I'm missing context here. One moment.
Yeah. And I know the third one, the Dreamfall Chapters, came out some time ago. And I have the entire series. It's one of those, when did I pick up all of this?
Yeah.
There are way too many games where I go, okay, when did I get this and where and why?
Yeah.
I assume the why is because it came in a bundle. It was like $2, that that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I think that'll about do it for that facet of news. So merrily we shall roll along to the main portion of the broadcast. We were supposed to have a guest here, but she got sick and things had to be delayed till the end of next month. So given that was a day out, not really enough time to come up with a new guest, unless there was like a guest I was working on and just conveniently there at that moment in time. That has happened before.
Oh yeah, serendipity is a hell of a drug in this industry.
But more often than not, it's having to drag something else out, and in this case, it's returning back to the Computer Chronicles. And this time around, we are going to be taking a look at probably one of the less explored narratives in the story of the Commodore 64, now that I think about it. Because this episode is coming in at the year of 1988. Which is well into the lifespan of the Commodore 64. To the point, and it's going to come up in the episode, where the Commodore 64 isn't really in the conversation in terms of computers over here in North America.
People have started moving to the IBM PC at this point, and I believe the Amiga is coming soon, isn't it?
No, the Amiga's out by this point.
Yeah.
It's just the Amiga never had the penetration over here that the Commodore 64 had.
I mean, yes, but at the same time, it was still the people who are mostly the audience of the Computer Chronicles, it was much higher on their radar than the Commodore 64 was.
That is true. That is true. And this is the time when we still have a lot of viable computer devices. Yeah, the IBM PC compatibles. We also have the Apple family, most of the Macintosh, I believe. Maybe the Apple IIgs, the Atari 8-bits, and maybe the Atari ST. But there's still a lot of platforms here. But the Commodore 64 is an older device, so it's not getting as much coverage over here like it is in Europe. The Commodore 64 is actually if you look up the European gaming YouTube space, the Commodore 64 is still going to come up there because, well, just quite frankly, Commodore had better and bigger market penetration in all of Europe.
Right.
Not just the UK, but continental Europe also was quite receptive to the Commodore 64.
And not just Europe itself, like some of the outliers like Australia really loved the C64.
Yeah. So what we're going to get here is, and once again, it's going to come up a perspective of where's the Commodore 64 in its later stages of life in America. So to find out that answer, let's get into it.
Rolling the tape.
This is a Toys R Us store in Redwood City, California, but from what you see hanging on the racks here, you'd think it ought to be called Software R Us. Most of the titles
God, remember we could actually buy software, like physical discs?
But there's a lot of life left.
I remember there were dedicated software stores.
I missed this in Toys R Us, but I remember when they had actual video game cartridges.
On this edition of the Computer Chronicles.
Actually, I guess they might still. It's just a little off in a different section and stuff.
I've never been to Toys R Us, so I'd never know.
I don't think I've been to a Toys R Us since the 90s.
Well, they mostly stopped existing a few years.
I know.
I never had one
few
close
years
to me.
ago.
The closest one was like 2 hours away, so I... Also, fuck you, McGraw-Hill.
I like how you always take the time to say that.
And am I wrong?
Nope. Publishing Byte Magazine is not helping your case, McGraw-Hill.
No, it's not.
I mean, Byte Magazine was a very important and influential periodical of the time.
Welcome to the Computer Chronicles. I'm Stuart Chaffee.
And we're back in the wood panel era.
Hi, Gary. Oh, God, Tetris on a C64.
Oh, God, the Tetris thing is triggering me.
I know.
That is among the worst looking Tetrises.
I had a feral reaction to that too, Adam.
Yeah, I'm like... It's like, I know exactly what you're doing, stop it. You're just wanting the thing to end.
He did it with a $10 calculator in the mid-70s, remember that one? He did it also with the Commodore 64, less than $200. The competition was 5 times that price. It's just a good basic computer for a very affordable price. The result is there's about, 7 million of these things in the United
Which is
States
why the
alone.
Commodore 64 is the best-selling computer of all time.
Because it was pretty cheap.
Not only cheap, but powerful for its price.
Gary, today we're going to focus on the good old Commodore 64.
Because they had devices cheaper than the C64, but they were awful.
The Trash 80.
Yup.
64 is still around is it got a new operating system a couple of years ago, something called GEOS.
Oh God, we're going into GEOS. Jesus Christ.
I mean, of course the Computer Chronicles would do that.
Oh God, I am too sober for this.
But the award for popularity must go to the Commodore 64, a little 8-bit machine.
Note to self, vet these videos first if I need to have an array of alcohol in front of me.
Have inspired some software developers to take a second look at the 64's potential. One of those companies is Berkeley Softworks, next to the university campus in Berkeley, California.
What we did is we looked at these markets,
I
at the
think
Commodore 64 market.
I'm trying to remember what they put out. I'm like, that name sounds familiar.
It really does, other than, obviously Berkeley being Berkeley, but like Berkeley Softworks.
I want to say they were an edutainment publisher.
Probably.
Hey
Google.
And the net of all that is we're capable now of developing applications for these machines that I don't think people really thought these machines
this is
were
gonna
capable of.
I know, right?
Berkeley's most important product is the GEOS operating system.
Oh, they
a
made
graphic
GEOS?
interface for the 64 and 128.
We have
Hey,
these
yeah.
bastards to
Pull-down
thank.
menus, icons,
I mean,
and
hate.
windows. The new operating system
I wasn't
opens the door
expecting you to
some
be
very
so
sophisticated
opinionated
applications,
about
like a
the
spreadsheet called GeoCache
GUI of the Commodore
and
64.
GeoFile, a database
It's-
with user-designed
We had
files.
a Commodore back
There's
in
limited desktop
elementary
publishing
school,
packages,
and that
simply
damn
usually
operating
requiring
system
big
always
memories
broke.
and big budgets.
I
But
mean,
Berkeley Softworks,
It
it's
may not
all
have
in
been the
Commodore.
OS itself
Mainly
because
by
it was
coding
a
much more
computer
efficiently.
in an elementary
The-
school.
I mean, a theorem
But at
Right.
the same
of science is any
time,
computer
when you're trying to
program
do like the
can be
computer
implemented by
lessons
one big
and the
coding
computer
machine. That's actually
is
a
bugging
theory that's been
out.
proven in computer science. So even this 8-bit processor is capable of doing all the things.
I wasn't
that a
expecting
much
this
more expensive
episode
computer
to
like
trigger
a
your
Macintosh or
villain,
Mac PC
your
is capable
villain
of doing.
origin
Now,
story.
it may not be
Yeah.
as fast, although we try to make up for the limitations and the capability of the machine by programming.
Oh,
more
Berkeley
efficiently.
also
But you can
apparently
actually do
did free
anything with a
BSD.
computer.
Could be it. Oh boy. Old people and computers. This is gonna go great.
That woman is more than likely dead now.
Yeah. I mean, I'm pretty sure a good chunk of people on this program are dead now.
Like the Commodore users groups, they principally C64 users, or what's the composition?
There are some user groups that are just Commodore.
Ah, yes,
64s,
user groups.
And there might be some that have a Amiga and 64.
Now you communicate through bulletin boards over modems, is that correct?
Once again, not unexpected for the computer chronicle.
Or BBS's.
Oh God.
Are those bulletin boards run by C64 sometimes or not?
Generally on another machine.
In his defense, he
But
looks
they
like
might
the kind
have
of geek
64
that would
Commodore
use a
64
user group.
Yeah, no, he's like the primordial redditor.
Downloads, uploads.
Say, Lucy,
Not sure why Grandma's here.
you don't appear to be the average game player of, he's using a Commodore 64. Why did you buy a 64?
Well, we have always been interested in computers, and my husband also does
Oh,
some
God.
programming. And the program is very easy.
She's
on the
computer
machine
savvy.
because he
Run.
I don't
uses it
know.
very easily, and we make
I don't know what to
mistakes
do with this
very often.
information.
So you're
Run as fast as you
Hey, there are
can.
plenty of old ladies,
You have a program that you wrote that,
especially around then, that knew stuff about computers because a lot of early computer programmers and stuff
Okay.
were women on account of the whole,
It's an interactive
automatic loom
program,
thing.
and as you run through the program, it asks
Right.
you what style you would like. And you have to have one thing before you start, which is the number of stitches per inch and the number of rows per inch, which you get from a swatch like this.
Now, this
All
is
right, we've already decided
the
we're
least
going to make
surprising
a
thing.
jacket,
She
and
uses
we're
it to
going to have a,
connect with her knitting
knit
group.
on band that is knit right in one with a sweater.
Like,
And so we're going to have
dear
it
God,
knitted.
lady, outside of
Now
the,
we have to decide if
being
we want a
knowledgeable
V-neck.
about a
I think
Commodore
we'll select the
64,
V-neck
you are,
today,
like,
and we're going to put
you're
neckband
the
right in one with
idea
the
of a
present band,
grandma.
so it's a little
Yeah.
faster. It leads you through the whole thing. Then
Like,
what kind
you're the
of
kind
sleeve
of
do you
person
want?
that people
Well, it's
picture
taking
of when they
sleeve
think
for
of
this.
grandma.
Well, let's have
That's
a
impressive.
husband sleeve. Then it asks you want
I can't
long
wait for the
short,
meme
and it'll
template
go along
of
with the
Grandma
short
at the
thing if you want a short
C64.
sleeve or straight sleeve. It goes on through all the questions. Then it will program.
What do you end up with? Show us.
God, that
Yes, I'll
screen.
do this on the screen also, but it will end
Yeah,
up with
yeah.
something like this.
Never grew up with that, though.
This is what you're going
My
to do.
house was IBM
Now, this
compatible.
prints out,
Yeah.
this prints out all the directions for a sweater very similar to the one that I have on.
And the one you're
Yeah, I
wearing
think
is
ours
the
was
one
too,
you're
as
wearing.
long as we
That's
always
great.
had
That's great.
computers,
Slide the computer over to Mike. And
which
also
was,
using the C64 to
we
do
didn't
something
really
with
have
the
computers for
Yeah,
a significant chunk of my childhood.
Screens.
I mean, my father was an aerospace engineer, so
Just
we
in the
always had a
picture, or
computer
sometimes I
around.
would put them in a. It would be a title screen for a program I was working on, or for a menu.
And you use the C64.
Trying to
plus
figure out what
the-
his patch is
Cool,
for.
okay.
and
I want to say he sent in
there's a-
in his high score
the
from an
software
Activision
itself.
game
Okay,
to
can you
get
show us
that.
some of the things
Yeah,
you do with
the-
all of-
Sure. Let me load this.
Okay.
I can't even tell what that
Okay,
is.
I have the menu here.
Curseus 2480p resolution
From that icon.
and video
Use
fuzziness.
name and
Yeah, there
save,
definitely had a
and
tracking
get.
problem with this
I
tape.
suppose we want to look at wackos there.
Okay, so we click on get and go up the whack.
Granted, we're also looking at an almost 40-year-old broadcast.
This is the picture.
Okay,
Yes.
that's pretty good. And that is what? What did you?
So minor cracking issues aside, it looks pretty good.
How did the 90s invade this?
Was running it, and he wanted to.
That logo
Yeah.
looks like it's from 1992. It's 1988.
Sure. Just go to swap here, hit that. This is for a program, a menu program. All you would see is this screen here.
Admittedly, for on the C64, that is pretty
You
awesome.
wanted to add some artwork
Yes.
to that screen now. How would you do that?
Okay, there's a part down at the bottom I'm still working on. Go to zoom here, put the window down here, and touch up these letters. Select a color.
God, this
So I want to get rid
this
of
was
the
once the source of wonderment and excitement.
Yeah.
Drag.
Now it's like the rotest thing ever.
And then you could just paint a graphic in that little space on the right if you wanted to, or
Yeah.
anything you want to do there, huh?
This really it's time consuming.
Yeah.
Well, one of the
It's
interesting
time
things is the video,
consuming.
composite video, same as
Oh,
your
my
camcorders
brother.
and so forth, so you could actually make titles and all sorts
I mean,
of
I guess
your
for
own,
the
video.
age, yeah,
Yes,
sure.
Mike, I mean, you have your sort of graphics design station here for an investment of probably well under $400 compared to some of the expensive systems we've seen here
Well
before.
under that.
Oh,
Listen, Mike, thank you very much. As
You
we've
just
seen, users groups have
didn't know
developed
Photoshop
elements
was
of
around the
success
corner,
in
did
Commodore
you?
64.
No one did, to
Asked
be
Wendy
fair.
Woods to go visit a users group meeting in Foster City, California, and
You-
here's her report.
Photoshop, I think, was still almost a decade away at this point.
About 2 or 3 years. Like Photoshop shows up in the early 90s.
I thought it came out like 96.
Adobe was still just being used for buildings in the desert.
Quiet you.
Try out programs, trade tips, and just plain get the help that they need.
Ah, yes. Those discs are very much grandma.
I mean, being an absolute neophyte 3 or 4 years ago, we knew nothing. Where do you go? What do you do?
I mean, I do get the subtext here.
We knew we
Commodore 64 is old, so let's get old people.
What we do is we offer a informal hand-holding type meeting where if somebody doesn't understand how to use a computer, we'll sit down with them, show them how to operate it, show them how to do the various processes that are required to run programs.
Oh, yes.
Show them how to put
The paper copy to type in your program.
Productive advantage.
Because they were short enough that was plausible.
Yeah.
At the Commodore users group meetings, interest in the C64
Oh no, they're
is
talking
still
about the
going
Amiga.
strong. The price keeps dropping and people keep buying.
You
them.
can still
Which is why
technically
it's a
program
good
it
time
largely in
for
MS
membership
in
groups
a
like this.
notepad or whatever.
Increased over the years. In Foster City, California, for the Computer Chronicles, I'm Wendy Woods.
If you're, insane.
Yeah.
Expert system wine selector. I'm like,
With us in the studio now is Malcolm Lowe with the Commodore West Users Group, and next to Malcolm is Kelly Flock with Electronic Arts.
Kelly, Electronic Arts is obviously a well-known
EA Electronic Arts.
How important is the Commodore
Yep.
64 relative to your whole
Fuck.
Apple, IBM PC, and so forth?
Well, the Commodore is very important. I would say that it's our second most important format behind the IBM compatible format.
What is it about the Commodore that makes it a good target for a game?
It's probably the leading home computer with its installed base of like 7 million units. And it's very game intensive since, as you know, we make a lot
I've
of
heard the name
entertainment
Kelly Flock
software.
somewhere
It's a
before.
natural place for us to be.
Now, Malcolm, you got a program in the tracked mode here in the background running called the Wine Steward. Can you tell us a little bit about that program?
Yeah, sure. The Wine Steward is a program that's designed to help people who are unfamiliar with purchasing wines to be able to make a
this is one of those things
going to have
where the internet quickly made irrelevant. When it was
Very
powerful.
much so.
Show us how you'd use it.
Yeah, sure. The basic screen.
And I'm not
is,
talking like
a menu
20
of,
years later or
choices.
anything like
You
that.
move
I'm
down
talking
the
like
menu with
mid
the,
90s.
Oh yeah.
You'd probably get a whole bunch of dedicated wine pages.
Well, hell, even user groups probably made this like truly obsolete.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's making its decision as to what wines to recommend.
But not everyone was aware of what a user group.
There are 3 on the first screen, which are
Yeah, oh, yeah.
wines. The second
But it's
screen
definitely one of those
is obviously
things
a
like
popular price. and the third.
We're in the weird middle ground where, yeah, this was a cool novelty, but if you're willing to look, you could find something more up to date.
True, but that's kind of that's the thesis statement that this episode's trying to get across.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay,
this is about as mass mark as you get at this point in time.
Called Skate or
Right.
Nine. I want you to tell me about that.
So, like they had affordable wines there,
Kind of like a skateboard
like
simulation where you get to,
as opposed to like if you would release this on the IBM platform, you'd probably be targeting, somebody who's in business, therefore, more expensive wine.
Yeah.
There we go. He fucking made Skate or Die. Right. Where's the compound bow?
I was about to say, here we enter Adam's villain arc.
I wish.
Like, in fairness, I played the NES version of Skate or Die, but it's still an awful, awful game. Like, all of those fucking sports compilation things from the 80s were piss.
I will say, something they're not really going into here, having music and gameplay in the C64 is an accomplishment.
I'm not sure how much of an accomplishment that is, because Commodore 64 was known for its music.
Well,
doesn't it just have like internal speakers mostly?
For other computers of the era, sound was also handled by the CPU, so you couldn't have active things going on, like the Apple II and stuff like that.
The Commodore 64 had a dedicated chip called the SID chip. In fact,
no, Kelly, are there more things you can do besides just skating on this ramp? Or
yeah.
There's a total of 5 events. The ramp is the only event modeled on real skateboarding. There's a couple of
5 events, and they're all
skate through bushes.
Yeah.
Some are more terrible than others.
Where you have 3 computer opponents.
You will not be changing my mind on this.
We're going to tie Adam up and make him play Skate or Die one day.
I've played Skate or Die.
Play it again.
As the Commodore market gets older, it becomes more price sensitive.
I mean, to be fair, if ropes are involved, the choice becomes less of a choice at that point.
I mean, would make Skate or Die more playable?
Kelly, Michael, thank you very much. Gary, earlier this week, I got a chance to talk to the new president of Commodore, Max Toy, and I started out by asking him if Commodore looks at the 64.
Oh, there's a story behind that.
I know there is.
Now, maybe not this particular president, but yeah, we are well past the Tramiel era.
The golden age, let's be quite honest.
It's having a resurgence back in the education.
I'm like, in fact, the Tramiels are over at Atari Corp.
Now, I will tell you that we have seen.
But I'll save that commentary because Jeff Tramiel appears on the Computer Chronicles. I think more than once.
Times, yes.
Are people still buying Commodore 64s?
The incredible thing about the Commodore 64 is it does continue to grow, and the market continues to expand. We sell worldwide between 1 million and 1.5 million Commodore 64s every year. And
98 probably not as much as, you know, mid-80s.
You mean 88?
Business marketplace.
Yeah.
But we're seeing a lot of young first-time users coming into the marketplace. In fact, I've heard it said that Commodore,
because it was cheap enough to do that.
Yeah, this was cheap enough you could hand off to your kid and let them bang around with it, compared to the IBM PC.
Old technology to the first-time user.
Well, it wasn't just that. It was marketed as an educational device, as a lot of computers were back in.
Yeah, hence why even in '95, when I was going to school, our elementary school computer labs still had C64s.
It was kind of like that with me, but Apple IIs.
Yeah.
I saw Apple IIs well into the 90s.
When we upgraded, like in second or third grade, we actually did, I believe, like one of the Apple computers we had.
Probably see all of the above. You know, at one end of the marketplace, you compete against the Nintendos, the game machines, and what we're seeing
the Nintendos
deciding that they would much rather
it's 1988. Nintendo really, Nintendo is the game industry right now.
Yeah, literally. I believe we've been over the crash a few times, but yeah. If not for Nintendo coming to America, we probably would not be talking with each other.
We're continuing to
That's
spend
not
our
exactly
research
true.
and dollars on
Like the
product
conversation
and
around the
full market
crash is
support,
deeper than that, but
capabilities of that product. So it's an very, very important
like
product
you
for
have
our
to go
Commodores
pretty deep into the
existence today
console,
and its future.
into the
You've got
console
great
space to talk,
assets that are
in
installed
order to
base.
start talking
You've got
about the
manufacturing
Atari
and design
7800
capability to build
or the
and
Sega
further
Master
silicon
System.
up.
Fair.
And the fact
You
that
know,
we've got such a strong active
because I
user
believe
community
they
out
are they're about emerging
Commodore
in
users
this
have
year.
for the Commodore
If not
machines
then
for
like
what they've been able to do with
1987.
those machines.
But
It's
you
absolutely
know,
incredible. And
meanwhile
that's
the
exciting.
NES is just getting more and more popular. Apexing in like 1989, 1990, which is why a lot of the external video game stuff that centers around the Nintendo Entertainment System, like from that time.
From Pacific to California, and behind Bill Gary is a table full of synthesizers, all hooked up to a 64.
Bill, you're a very accomplished musician. What is it
about the Commodore 64
that makes it a good music computer?
Well, I mean, the Commodore 64 was an accomplished music device.
I'm aware. I'm just looking at how that is all hooked up, and my brain is screaming no.
Well, it makes sound. It has.
I mean, you didn't have to hook it up.
I know.
Musicians in it, you could say.
And they're also discussing the SID chip here, so.
Individual
of course they are.
Separate, or they can play them simultaneously. We can have a flute and a bass.
SID chip was 6 voice, wasn't it?
Okay, and then you can experiment with the different sounds and mix them and so forth.
Think so?
I can study the attack, delay, and sustain and release.
Okay.
Now you've got some software in here, some composition software called Master Composer, is it?
Uh-huh.
Show us how that works using the SID chip, Bill.
Well, here you can see I already entered a few notes. Let me go over here. And I have 3 voices. I've got my musician number 2 here. And you see I have some rest up there. So I have about, I would say I have 16 positions that I can
okay, and if you wanted to go ahead now and listen to that music you would just put in there.
And this is using only the SID chip, right? No synthesizer.
Oh, the SID chip was 3 voices.
Okay, you want to listen to
I thought it had more than what the NES chip did.
And it's showing the notes that it's playing as it goes on, huh? And that's all just coming out of the 64.
As they're playing. That's all coming out of 64. No help.
And they're the notes you had entered before. This is a little piece of music you would enter.
And that is the note structure I expect to come out of a C64 composition.
The whole ball game here and hook up all your
I mean, sawtooth waves are always
right.
pretty similar, I believe.
To the Commodore, hooked up with the Commodore.
Ah, yes, the MIDI.
The interface, I go through my MIDI through box, which we can't see. And from that, I'm hooked up.
In fairness, MIDI is fairly state-of-the-art in 1988.
Yeah,
the ability to actually design on a granular level the voices of your instruments and then plug sequenced notes into them is pretty useful.
Which is probably why they're doing this demonstration here.
I imagine there's probably a Roland MT32 under the desk somewhere.
That's a bit more sophisticated. Like Roland sound? That's well above MIDI.
There was there's probably a MIDI Roland MIDI device.
Tell us what you're doing.
Probably, but I'm talking about.
If this dude's like doing professional music creation, he probably has a Roland down there.
Yeah.
That's pretty darn good.
It's a bit more laid back than what I'm used to out of the Commodore 64 scene. Still not bad.
You had told us before you were thinking about getting out
Well, and that's not really coming off the C64 as much as it's coming from the instruments.
Right.
Rehearse with. I don't have to tell them play my music simple. I want, and I've got a drummer that this crazy machine will just play all day long. And most of the time I would wear musicians out. I like to rehearse. And these guys say,
I want to say I know this guy from somewhere, but I have no idea where.
More control.
With pretty little investment, as you said.
Oh, it's a very cheap investment.
Thanks so much for being here, Bill. That's our look at the Commodore 64. Hope we'll see you here again next week on the Computer Chronicles.
Oh man, random access.
Yep.
some random access file this week. There are reports that the new DBase 4 program has some bugs in the SQL mode. Byte Magazine's Microbyte service and a company called Quadbase have both reported that responses to SQL query statements can lead to incorrect reports on the number of records or to an internal error message that prevents the execution of the query. Action Page says it is investigating.
This will not be the last time SQL fucks up.
The Macintosh community several months ago has been discovered on a Mac CD-ROM disk of public domain software. The virus infected 7 files on the disk, including a hypercard stack, and stuff it.
See, Macs can get viruses.
Yep.
Oh God.
The only reason they have the reputation for not getting viruses is because they're generally immune to Windows, or were back in the day, are generally immune to Windows viruses.
That and there just wasn't that many people using Macintosh.
Right. It was also a smaller target environment. It was a smaller target environment, and they didn't get like casual.
But dear God, were Mac users insufferable about it?
Yes.
I'm still pissed about it to this day.
And nowadays, you don't get viruses on Macs because they don't let you decide what programs you're installing on your thing.
IBM says it has developed a new experimental circuit that could lead to PCs with mainframe speed. The CMOS circuit is 1/100th the thickness of a human hair. It can switch on and off 30 billion times a second. A memory chip using the new circuit could contain up to 256 megabits of information. Time for this week's software review. Here's Paul Schindler.
In our available minute, we can't settle the age-old question of whether you really need an encyclopedia or not, but if you decide you do, for yourself or your children, which would you rather have? These 20 volumes or this compact disc? This is the electronic encyclopedia, and it contains all the text from the academic.
It is important to remember that CD-ROM technology was a thing at this point.
Yes.
Just hadn't exploded, it needed a few years in the oven. But of course, they're hawking the interactive encyclopedias that.
Because for a long time there wasn't really much need for that much data storage.
Yep.
Hence why they're putting an encyclopedia on it here.
Basically,
and frankly, it's still probably only taking up half of it.
If that.
Be careful what you do with that disk file, because you don't want to plagiarize this work. Now, I know in order to use this, you need an $800 CD-ROM player for your PC. Believe me, this isn't the last CD-ROM program you'll want. The Electronic Encyclopedia is $300 from Grolier Electronic Publishing in New York.
It's Grolier.
I was about to say, it's not Britannica. I know it's not.
No, but I'm like, Grolier, the fucking staple of the interactive encyclopedia scene of the 90s. Not the only player, sure, but it's one of them where you're gonna point it out, like I did.
It's a piece of Lisp software that lets you type in natural language commands for normal DOS functions. The software sells for $89.95.
Oh man.
Chartered Electronics of Singapore has introduced Faxility. It's a black box which attaches to your computer and lets your fax board receive faxes, even if your PC is turned off. The box will sell for $145. It's awaiting FCC approval.
God, remember when you can get faxes?
What happens when two computerized machines mate?
I think you still can. Yeah, like
just
like
not used much.
Yeah, unless you're in contact with a lawyer.
Yeah, it's mostly used for legal and business purposes now because I believe ostensibly, aside from being smaller in data size, faxes are slightly harder to tamper with.
Mm-hmm.
In print and online.
Also, fuck you, McGraw-Hill.
Serve computer professionals worldwide with detailed information on new hardware, software, and technologies.
For a transcript of this week's Computer Chronicles, send $4 to.
I would not suggesting sending $4 to this address.
Kent, Ohio 44240.
No.
Indicate program date.
On the other hand, it's only $4.
Yeah, we'll leave it there.
You could get like an egg for that now. I'm joking, but
you're not though. That's the problem.
And yeah, so that was the Commodore 64's look at. The Computer Chronicles look at the Commodore 64, which gave a pretty good all-around presentation of where the system was in 1988.
Mm-hmm.
Like, all things considered. Anyway, so with that in mind, Penny, if you can play the music, it's time for the topic of discussion.
All right, the music happened. I just couldn't switch everything over.
Duly noted. Right. Okay, so welcome to the topic of discussion for the week. This time around, we are talking about a game that I didn't think we would ever need to talk about.
Until the gates of hell opened up.
Allegedly.
Fair.
I mean, there's actually been some scuttlebutt on whether that listing was or is real or not. But it certainly got people talking over the weekend as the very infamous worst game ever, Big Rigs Over the Road Racing, popped up in a Steam listing. Like,
yep.
So I suppose I'm going to have to go over what Big Rigs is a bit, because the initial release of that game, and even like the mimetic stuff, like the AVGN episode, those happened. That happened all a long time ago, especially in internet time.
Oh god, yes.
Like, but Big Rigs Over the Road Racing, as you might be able to infer from the name, is a racing game. Or at least it's an alleged racing game. Because
Hey, did you hear the one where they called it Big Rigs Over the Road Racing because the ground barely has any collision, so you're not usually on it?
Among other problems. You're way too amused. Like, but yeah, Big Rigs Over the Road Racing is renowned for the shittiest game in existence, because it is not basically, it is a pre-alpha in a box. Like, I believe it's been they just put pre-alpha and put it on CD, shipped it off to Walmart. Like, and it certainly comes.
And this was like barely in the era where games could regularly get updates. Like, right. It was still hard.
It was easier on PC though.
Yeah, you could get patches. They're typically hosted on the developer's website. You wouldn't get a notification if the patch was out. You just kind of had to stumble upon it. Your client wouldn't auto-update or anything like that.
Yeah, but
occasionally, if it was like very bad, if you registered the software, you would get a letter from the company being like, "Hey, there's a patch available. You can either go download it from our site or pay us X amount of dollars, and we'll send you a disc with the patch on it."
And realistically speaking, patching would not have all that much, because I think on the list of the worst games of all, this might be mechanically the worst, like just in terms of things functioning, because very basic things do not work.
For reference, you can go in reverse. There is no limiter. You can literally go to the point where the number rolls so high it will crash your computer, if not go to actual infinity, depending on how good of a floating point unit you had at the time.
Yeah. There's no traction in the game. Like, going up, that's why going up hills looks like it does. Like off-roading, no matter, like, you can even go out into the void, like out of bounds. There are no bounds.
The bounds are where you make them.
Your AI opponent does it stops before the finish line. It cannot finish. Like, the infamous trophy sequence where you get a trophy and it declares your winner.
Oh, that meme template.
Unofficial logo of the Bad Games Hall of Fame.
Damn straight.
Like, and I think you can only access up to level 3 before the game crashes.
Something like that, yeah.
And like I said, that's why this is probably, like, just on an objective level, the worst video game on that list.
Now, since the coverage of stuff like AVGN, people have sat down and like rebuilt the game to make it tolerable, but it's still not like, I wouldn't play that over something like, GTA's racing stuff or Need for Speed or the
Why
like.
are we bringing real racers into the equation? I wouldn't play this even fan patch over, say, Superman 64, E.T., or 6. Some of
Road
the
Simulator
other
with all the fun parts stripped out.
Yeah. Because this game is broken, and that's its charm. That's it's entered the post modern irony zone where people play it
for YouTube reactions or just irony.
Yeah, or the weird speedrunning community that's evolved around this game.
Emphasis on weird.
Yeah. But the thing we were talking about most on Sunday is, the legacy of big rigs over the road racing. And that's really the thing that keeps this thing alive. Because, once again, there are other games I could cite.
Yeah. There have been other unabashedly bad games that have been lost to the annals of history.
Right. But on the other hand,
Big Rigs has endured.
Well, it's not a somehow. It's because it's, got the reputation of being, like, one of the absolutely worst pieces of shit in the gaming scene to ever have arisen.
Mm-hmm.
But even that is a reputation born of a specific time. Because
it would have just been bad if you couldn't, like, share clips of stupid stuff happening.
Yeah, but it got found by early internet culture, and it has been mimetic ever since the initial review by Peter Navarro on GameSpot in 2004, if I'm remembering correctly. In fact, if you've actually watched that GameSpot review, it comes across as something that absolutely would have been out of the internet humor scene that arrived in the late aughts to early 10s.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, it'd be on the level of, say, a Funny or Die sketch, not something like the Nostalgia Critic or the AVGN, because there's not enough swearing, there's not enough caustic critic shit.
I'm pretty sure GameSpot would have exploded though if he went into a swear fest on that.
Right.
Because GameSpot, especially at the time, were trying to look respectable.
Right. And of course, since it was featured on an episode of the AVGN during his golden era, that also added to the reputation, because I think he mentioned that, like, just, this is the worst game he's ever played, objectively speaking.
Mm-hmm.
And that also led to the Big Rigs commercial, which is one of the better segments to come out of that program. But if Big Rigs had been released, I'd say up to the early Steam era, back when the place was gated, like, to exist in a place, where it could have gotten the attention. Because these days, honestly, a game this broken isn't anything special.
It would have got so many returns, Steam would have just told them to delist.
Among other things. It's also, we're in the era of Steam Early Access, Steam, like, not even Steam Greenlight, but Steam, you got $100, you got a Steam page.
Well, and also, even with, like, just modern engines and stuff like that, you can't make a game that broken anymore without actively trying.
Right. Like, but there's just so much more software. There's just so much, and it also, like, this game wouldn't get a dedicated AVGN episode or like a dedicated look at from, say, Commander Sterling. Like,
yeah. Hell, it wouldn't even been looked at by GameSpot. They would have just been like, why are we wasting our time with this? And went to something more palatable.
Yeah. I'm like, I'm not sure what that says about the current era, but it says something.
We're getting so many games. Why would you look at unredeemable garbage when there's just so much coming?
It's also irredeemable garbage in less interesting ways.
Yeah.
Than, like putting a popular character in a Titanic piece of shit.
Yeah.
Or, being very thematically confused, like, say, Ride or Die Retribution, whatever, unlike, or The Devil's Third.
Yeah.
Hey, at least those had actual mechanics in them.
Yeah, I would agree.
You could drive in big rigs. It didn't work very well, but you could drive.
Yeah, like, once again, I would consider Big Rigs to be the worst game to ever reach any sort of critical mass. And probably second on the list would be Plumbers Don't Wear Ties. But that has its fan base as well. I mean,
right.
But, this is also why Big Rigs Over the Road Racing would make a reappearance. It's because, its reputation is so infamous, so known, but people can't just, take word at face value either.
No, yeah.
They've got to gawk, they've got to rubberneck, they got to see what all the fuss is about.
Yeah, like, it's like why people sit and stare at train wrecks, because, how do you fuck up that bad? The world must know.
Yeah. Oh, right. I suppose another game or game series that would be the equal to this is Action 52.
Yeah.
Some of those might have worked, but yeah.
Yeah, Action 52 actually had some working games in there. They weren't
still
great, but they were at least fully functioning.
Yeah. Still, like I said, this is a pure piece of shit that has endured for decades.
Like
because,
me, it lives out of spite.
Because, like I said, if it were, say, trying to think of some generic game
Insert
from
Unity asset flip here.
No. Trying to think of some 5 out of 10, bland piece of shit from the PlayStation 2 era.
Probably just like many of the general Nancy Drew games, like they're okay, but they wouldn't get spot anywhere, you know?
I would actually say you're wrong because Nancy Drew has a particular legacy, but that's beyond the scope of what we're talking about here. No, I'm talking about, I'm trying to think. Ford Race. 5 out of 10 at best, bargain bin stuffer.
Yeah, you would just be playing that because you wanted to see the Ford car models in action.
Like, if we got the Ford Racing Collection next week on Steam, nobody would care. And by the way, this is a real series of racing games. They existed to, either scratch a particular itch or,
take money from fans of an IP.
Not even that cynical. Like, fairly cynical, yes, but they are serving a particular market because I know there's been at least 4 Ford racing games or the Deer Hunter game. Like, not good games, but they have their role in society because they're bought by deer hunting enthusiasts in general, the Walmart crowd. Like, but if you like released Deer Hunter next week, how many people would care? Like, maybe the original one because that does have a legacy to it. But some of the other Deer Hunter games that aren't called Deer Hunter, like if you put those onto Steam, I don't think anyone would care. Like, no, I'm not saying that wouldn't happen. I do follow an account on Steam called 4Retro, and some of the Arthur Living Books games have been silently coming to Steam, or some random ass backyard sports games. And nobody noticed, except for an account that's actively following this kind of thing. Whereas when Big Rig hit, people took notice.
It the gaming news outlets all had posts about it.
Yeah, people were digging in, seeing if this was real. Like, people cared.
Like, I believe people were actually looking into who currently had the IP at the moment to make sure this was real. Like,
right.
That people you don't do that for some throwaway game from the early 2000s.
Yeah, people were doing detective work. So, this game is still relevant. Which is its most impressive feat. Like, it's so shit it didn't get forgotten by the.
That's how we all want to go out.
Maybe, but that is usually what happened. The exceptional and the exceptionally terrible get remembered.
Oh, yeah.
Mediocrity.
I have a bunch of Genesis games that I know are never going to see the light of day again.
Right. Like, nobody's going to bring up Skeleton Crew.
Right.
Unless you're, covering it randomly. Like, I think that's what happened with CGR Undertow and Classic Game Room. Or you're doing a deep dive of that system, like what Random
that system or that developer.
Yeah, that kind of deal. No, like Big Rigs Over the Road Racing has a legacy. It's an earned legacy. Don't fucking play this game.
Yeah.
Just take the word of those who have played it. You can take the word of the YouTubers that, yes, this game is fucking awful. Because you know what happens when people put money into something, even ironically? We get more of it.
Yes.
And we
Chick gets
don't
revived, looks at Bubsy.
Looking at you, Deadly Premonition.
Yeah.
Like, but yeah. We don't need a Big Rigs Over the Road Racing 2, which will, ironically enough, be not as shit as the first game. It'll just be some uninteresting, it'll be another uninteresting racing game in a sea of. That's usually how this goes.
Yeah, typically. We'll get another 4 or 5 out of 10 product, and it will be forgotten.
Yep. Like, how many people remember Deadly Premonition 2?
The only reason why I know about it is because a streamer who I follow sometimes just does bad games, and it was up on their radar.
Yeah. Well, with that in mind, I think that'll about do it for Big Rigs Over the Road Racing. And indeed, that'll about do it for this installment of the Fragments of Silicon. So coming up on the week ahead, we do have a new episode of MSP planned. Bit of a programming note there. Kevin, our co-entertainment chair on that program, has tapped out this week because he was really busy this week. If I'm correctly,
it was. He had prior engagements
to
from
be
what
on
I
the
recall.
program. So it goes sometimes. Anyway, so we do have a Friday show this week, and if I can get to the right page, we'll be having Joan Marie of JMAA Games, or possibly JAMA Games. I'm not exactly sure if that's an acronym or an initialism. I know the difference. Like, the record, an initialism is when you say all the letters. An acronym is when you pronounce them.
CIA is an initialism. NASA is an acronym.
Indeed, it is. And coming up on the Sunday game reviews, we'll be having reviews of Isle of Jura, maybe Isle of Jura, Corridin, Which Way Up, Galaxy Games, and Trolls vs. Vikings Reborn. So until next time, I shall wish you good gaming.